Hello and welcome to 1874. It's time for a match preview show, FA Cup edition, as Villa travel to Preston North End Sunday 1:30. Absolutely huge game for Villa. A massive chance to get to Wembley and play in the semi-finals in April. This show is, as always, sponsored by Luke Roper. So if you want to get hold of any Luke Roper gear, use the code TVV20 and you will get 20% off everything Luke Roper have to offer, like this t-shirt that I'm sporting right now. I am joined by our match preview expert, Dave Reed, Sky Sports News. And, I'm going to throw him under the bus here a little bit because he stated to me that he doesn't know much about Preston before the show. But the last two deadline days, Dave Reed has been employed as the EFL man. So he should know something about Preston.
Thanks for that, Daniel. Yes. I haven't seen much of them this season. No. And I messaged a friend of mine who is a Preston fan, and all he responded was, all you need to know is that you're going to batter us. So that's the kind of feeling amongst the Preston fan base.
I guess I suppose Preston they're kind of mid-table-ish for the Champions League, not the Champions League, in the Championship. They're not going to go up, they're not going to go down. So actually, they're kind of probably one of the teams that people will have seen the least of because they're not exciting.
I think that's probably a fair assessment. Yeah, they're in the position in the season now where they can probably fully focus on this game. They're not having to worry about winning games between now and the end of the season in order to make the playoffs. So, yeah, this is a real opportunity for them and a real opportunity for Villa.
Yeah, for those that are fans of this show and watch the preview show every week, you'll note there's no crackling that I can hear anyway. We have solved the crackling issue by the looks of it.
Don't go too far too quick.
I can't hear it. This is the clearest you've sounded for weeks.
Right, okay. Well, that's good to hear.
Should we give some insight into what you've done? You did tell me. I didn't really understand what it was.
I've turned the gain down on my microphone. I always knew I had a big booming voice, so maybe I was just clipping slightly on the sound levels. So I've turned the gain down. Maybe it's worked. People can let us know, can't they?
Yeah, let us know in the chat. We know people get very excited about this stuff. I'm going to be honest. I've got the same microphone as you. I would not know how to turn the gain down. I wouldn't know what I'm doing there.
Well, a handy Reddit thread from our good friend Adam Bates sorted us out, so I managed to work it out from there.
We'll say, as I am throwing people under the bus today, it was great of Adam to send that through about the crackling, but he didn't set up the show, so that was a bit of a problem. Me and Lee had to cobble together this show, so hopefully it all works as it should. Afternoon, Michael Huggins, very polite, coming in there, wishing Dave and I a good afternoon, and the people that are in the chat. Let's go then, Dave. Let's preview this game. Out of everything that Villa are in, and they're in the Champions League, they're in the mix for qualification for the Champions League through the Premier League as well, which is excellent. I've got to be honest, the FA Cup is the most important thing to me, and it will be to many other Villa fans as well for reasons that we'll come on to. You may remember this time last year, I was a bit blasé about Villa being in the Conference League, quarterfinals, semi-finals. I kept saying finishing top four is more important. Conference League doesn't really bother me. The FA Cup does really bother me. I don't know whether it's because the Conference League is a newish trophy, feels a little bit made up, doesn't always feel like a real tournament, the kind of thing that you might see on Pro Evolution Soccer back in the day. But the FA Cup, I feel completely differently to how I felt this time last year. I am up for this, and this is the one I really want, if I'm honest.
So, just so we're clear, then you would like Villa to prioritise FA Cup over maybe Premier League this season?
I don't think you need to prioritise it, but I think if you're asking me now what's most important to me as a fan this season for Villa, now we're in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup and you look at the landscape of the teams that are left in, Villa are second favourites at the moment, probably because they're playing Preston away. I just think, well, are we ever going to get a better chance to win the FA Cup and win a trophy, win a domestic trophy again? I don't know. So it just feels huge to me.
Yeah, on the whole, I actually I kind of agree, because you do feel like, given the teams that are left in, there are teams left in who don't have an awful lot of experience of latter stages of domestic cup competitions. I'm not sure even some of them have won a major trophy before. You're talking about Crystal Palace, Brighton, that are still
Crystal
left
Palace
in it.
Had a famous FA Cup victory a number of years ago.
Right,
maybe
okay.
In the early 90s.
And you think that Now, there's two ways of looking at it, really. My personal opinion is that I feel like it's going to be very difficult now for Villa to qualify for the Champions League. That's even me including the top 5 scenario. And you look at the running that Villa have got now, there's two ways of looking at it. Either it's an absolute stinker, or it's one that you're absolutely delighted about, because Villa are going to be playing a lot of the teams that are going to be challenging them for those European places.
Yeah.
The way I see it is that the FA Cup now is an unbelievable opportunity, not just to go to Wembley for a semi-final, but to potentially go to Wembley for a final. You know, Unai Emery's history in cup competitions is fantastic. We've seen it throughout his career. And this is the time for him and this group of players to take advantage of this situation. It's an argument that's been said before as well. If Villa come out of the Unai Emery era, whenever that comes to an end, it will eventually come to an end, and they haven't secured a trophy, that will be a huge setback. And I think, given the progress that's been made by the club, by this group of players over the last couple of years, it feels right that there should be a trophy at the end of it. And this is an amazing opportunity. And as you rightly say, there may not be a better opportunity in the next few years.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting question coming from Chris Swan here. I like Chris Swan because he gives himself a little squad number. I can imagine him walking around with a piece of Villa training gear on with CS on and the number 27. He says, any tips on how to manage Mother's Day and fitting the game in? Got to admit, it hasn't really crossed my mind. Sorry, Mum. But I will be at home watching the Villa game on Sunday at 1:30. For you, difficult times with a youngster in the house. Newish, Mum.
Major problems. Yeah, first Mother's Day. I'm not entirely
first
sure.
One as well.
Yeah,
oh my word.
I'm not entirely sure she knows that the game's on, so it could be an awkward conversation as we get towards Sunday. But there we go.
It's a difficult one. I saw my mum last night. I'm seeing her tomorrow, so it was a birthday yesterday. So I feel like I've done my bit as a son. I'll get a card, so I'll make sure the card and present gets there, of course. Still separate card and present, even though birthday was yesterday. But I think Jen saying her kids, that's a separate issue. I don't think it's a concern for me, but I understand that it will be a concern for many others. I'm also on TalkSport in the morning, so I work. That's work. So not a concern to me, but 1:30 kickoff on Mother's Day. That's
a difficult one.
My suggestion, Chris Swan, would be, I don't know whether your worries stem from a partner or whether it's your own mum that you're worried about. My feeling would be, and you've probably left this a bit late if you haven't done it, a nice dinner, like a 5 o'clock outing maybe for some food with whoever that concerns. That would be my advice. No advice for you, Dave. You're in a real tricky situation here, really in the trenches.
Yeah, it is prime roast dinner time, isn't it? That kickoff. So it is a problem. Probably should say as well, Mother's Day can be a difficult time for a lot of people.
Yes, also,
so,
yes.
Just enjoy the game. It's going to be great. So hopefully Villa can get the win.
Yes, very well said, Dave Reed. So I've completely thrown off track by Chris Swan and his hard-hitting questions, to be honest. But when I say, the FA Cup is the most important thing to me, I'm not discounting that the other things are important. Obviously, Villa could do with qualifying for the Champions League. Again, that's massive for the club. I'm not ruling us out doing something special in the Champions League. I do think there's a world where that happens and Villa can go all the way in the Champions League. But believe it or not, I genuinely think that, however difficult it might be with Unai Emery and these players, I always think anything's actually possible. And all the decisions that you have to make aren't mutually exclusive. I'm just saying that my preference this season, if I could choose one thing that I'd really, really want, it would be to be at Wembley and see us lift a trophy I've never seen us lift before, the FA Cup. And that anyone that hasn't been around since, anyone that wasn't around before 1957, loads of people haven't seen Villa win the FA Cup. So I just think it's one of those trophies that, because it's been to like Newcastle winning the Carabao Cup the other way, because nobody there had ever really seen that club win anything, it becomes a huge thing, because not many people will have seen Villa lift the FA Cup in 1957 that would be there and be watching. I just think that takes on kind of extra heritage and it becomes a massive thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, having watched the celebrations for Newcastle, it feels like the FA Cup has maybe added a little bit more significance of that as well, just simply because of the celebrations, the amazing scenes. There's going to be, a parade or or a kind of presentation trophy thing in the city of Newcastle tomorrow, and there's going to be amazing scenes there, and it's almost whetted the appetite a little bit that Villa want to have those kind of feelings, and they want the day out at Wembley, and they want to have those celebrations. And it was one of those things that was described in the build-up to the game at Wembley between Newcastle and Liverpool. You know, the Newcastle fans arrived early, sampling the atmosphere, you know, having the get-togethers and their drinks before the game. It felt like the Liverpool fans arrived at the stadium a little bit late, not necessarily taking it for granted, but it's something that they've experienced before, major finals, and that perhaps wasn't that same buzz. And then during the game as well, the Newcastle fans made a lot of noise. And you just feel like, you know, from a Villa supporters' point of view, you want to have those days at Wembley, those feelings and those celebrations, because you feel like it would be at least on a par with those Newcastle celebrations.
Oh, it'd be massive. I remember the celebrations when we got promoted, and that, you know, I don't class that as a trophy, but obviously it was a huge day for the Villa fan base. And I remember how I felt. I felt relief more than anything, to be honest, that day. But I remember kind of the celebrations on the day after the game in Box Park and whatnot, and it would be a huge thing. And I also remember being like the Carabao Cup final in 2020, being in Box Park after that and feeling heartbroken. I mean, I've got to be honest, that day I never envisaged that Villa would win that trophy. But still, at the end of the day, you're upset you've been to a final and you haven't won. And I've been to other finals that Villa have lost. It's, you know, they're hard moments. So to have the flip side of that and to be able to celebrate at Wembley and see us win a trophy is just a massive thing with my friends and family. It'd be absolutely incredible. Let's talk team selection, Dave. And it feels like Villa haven't had a real game for about 87 years after it. Well, probably a month or so ago, it felt like Villa had a game every 2 days, and I was at Villa Park every 5 minutes. But now I feel like I haven't seen us play for a long, long time. Obviously, we've had 2 weekends without a game. We played a behind closed door game that we won. Players have obviously been away with the international duty. Some of the players and Unai Emery and the coaching staff have been together in Dubai, wasn't it, that they went to go through some stuff and have a little bit of a relax and get some sun, which is nice. But it's hard to then think, what team are we going to pick? You and I had a discussion. So try and go through the 11 and what we think the team might be. Surely we're not going to risk Robin Olsen in an FA Cup quarter final. You wouldn't think. Surely it'll be Emi Martinez back in. Although, what am I right in thinking Olsen's played our last competitive game? Is that true? Or was Brugger our last competitive game? I can't actually remember. Brugger or Brent our last
No, it was Bruges. Yeah, it was Bruges.
Yeah. So Martinez has played our last game. You'd assume Emi Martinez is going to be in goal, wouldn't you?
I mean, you would. He has had a lot of distance to travel, and it wouldn't be the first time that he's come back. And we know that he's had to manage, you know, long-term fitness issues this season. He's missed a couple of games, and there was illness as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if the decision was made, depending on how he looks when he comes back, that there would be a change of goalkeeper. I think the game being on the Sunday does help recovery slightly from them. I think there's him coming back. There's Leon Bailey coming back from internationals. There's obviously Rashford and Rodgers as well, who've been with England. So those are the major decisions. And I think maybe Unai Emery might think, well, I've worked with the main core of the squad really for a couple of weeks. He's probably given them some time off as well as part of that. But he's worked at least with the main squad for a good 10 days now. And players coming back to fitness. We hear it's only Ross Barkley that's now injured. So he's pretty much got a full strength squad as well to pick from. So, I mean, to be honest, it's been that long since Villa have played. I've forgotten who plays for Villa now. So, trying to think of the names who might be in that starting 11.
Well, Dizazi won't be in there because he's cup tied. So that's another person that's missing. In the defence, we were talking before we came on, and then we decided we'd save it for the show. You kind of advocated that Pau Torres might be a good game for him, whereas I threw back at you. Actually, is a championship team where it could get a bit physical, perhaps. Where is that the best game to put him back in? Tyrone Mings has got experience of playing in these type of games because he's played in the EFL quite a lot. Would he be actually better for this one than Pau Torres? Do let us know in the chat what you think. But when I said that, did it change your mind slightly from your original Pau Torres thought?
Yeah, it does totally make sense. And if you're Preston North End, you're not going to try and play Villa off the park. I don't think.
You're going to try and make it
you're going to try and make it stodgy and a bit horrible. and the fans are going to be right on top of you. The only maybe counter to that is if, say, Preston retreat a little bit into their shell, like Cardiff did. I know Cardiff were away from home and they weren't in front of their own fans, but it will then be up to Villa to try and break down this Preston low block. And given that Pau Torres has now come back to fitness, we know his ability on the ball. He's able not just to break lines with his passing, but also by carrying the ball forward might be an option. But then it's one of them that you might want to see how the game goes. If Preston are front foot from the start and they try and make it a physical battle, maybe you start with Tyrone Mings and then you see how the game pans out. And if Preston retreat, or maybe if Preston are in front and Villa are having to do a lot of the chasing of the game, maybe it's then you kind of decide to bring on Pau Torres for his ability on the ball and his ability to be able to, keep the rotations of the ball in the opposition half. He enables Villa to pen in the opposition because of his ability on the ball. He enables Villa to close into that opposition final third and keep them in that low block.
Yeah. So do you also think that sometimes people will say, like, let's Conte's played 2 games in the international break. So people might say, well, he's played 2. Maybe don't play him for this one. I actually think it works the other way. I think if you've played in the international break, you've kind of got that rhythm. And I feel sometimes Emery looks at that more than whether people's load is too much, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. And also, Conte's probably undroppable now. He's one of those...
plays every game. There's a few players that just play every game, don't they? Three outfield players, I think, that whoever we play, if they're fit, they play.
But and I think Conte falls into that bracket, and hopefully he's come back okay and he's fine, and which it sounds like he is, because Unai Emery's told the press today that there's no fresh injuries apart from Ross Barkley's continuing absence. So if everyone's come back okay, then I think Conte plays, because he has to play every game, really.
Yeah, left back. I feel like Maatsen seems to play the cup games at the moment, and Luca Dean seems to play the league.
Yeah, could be one. I'd go with that. Yeah.
Then central midfield is interesting, because I think nowadays, although he did play as a number 10 in the Club Brugge game last time out, or was it the last time? I still don't know if it was the last time we played or not. I think McGinn now, he's competing for number 6 position, central midfield, because I think the attacking options that Villa have when everyone's fit, I think it makes more sense that he would play further back than play further forward. So does he play McGinn and Tielemans? Does he play McGinn and Kamara? Does he play Kamara and Tielemans and not play McGinn? I mean, these are all lovely problems to have. I'm not sure how he goes. I think McGinn will play. It makes me think Kamara might not.
I'm not totally convinced McGinn will play.
No, McGinn is I'm saying about people. There's 3 players who I think, whoever we're playing, whatever day of the week it is, they play, and that's Konsa, Tielemans, Rodgers. I think it just and probably Watkins falls into that bracket now. There's no John Duran as well. I just think Emery will always find a space for McGinn. That's my feeling. And
also, if you're going by what you were talking about earlier when it comes to Tyrone Mings, John McGinn has experience of the physicality of the Championship. He will be the one in the changing room geeing up these players and not letting them take this for granted. And he will have a real good idea as to how difficult the game is going to be against that kind of opposition. So if you're going by that token, then maybe, John McGinn does play.
Maybe he plays as a central 10.
Yeah, my only thought would be around whether Onana needs some minutes, because he's
saying that in the chat as well.
I think he's hopefully now come back to fitness and he'll be itching to get some games, because he's another one that needs rhythm in his game to really get the best out of him. And it's been very stop-start for him this season. He's been in, he's been out, he's been injured, he's been coming back maybe too early, and then he's out again. So for him, it feels like this is a game that he will need, and he brings a bit of physicality as well into that central midfield area. So it might be, it could be Onana and Kamara. That would be a thought.
So hard. It's really hard to guess.
But it's good that Villa have these kinds of problems, because whether it's through lack of depth or from injuries, it's not been the case in recent years that Villa have had that sort of dilemma.
And Stephen Bell saying here about we'll need to rotate a bit. That's bang on, because we have got another game, which is a massive game in the Premier League on Wednesday away at Brighton, a place we've done reasonably well at over the years. But it's a huge game in the battle for top 5 and European qualification and whatnot. So that probably will be considered, won't it?
Oh yeah, 100%, absolutely. There'll be I feel like there will be one eye on that Brighton game.
You think?
With this team selection, I feel like Villa have played enough football to. I feel like Emery will know his kind of first 11. I feel like I don't think there's too many question marks over Villa's first 11. Maybe one or two, but I think on the whole he will know his strongest 11.
I think we saw it when we played Club Brugge. I think that if Villa had been in a cup final that day, I think that was the team he would pick.
Yeah,
that was my thinking.
Yeah, so I don't think we'll see that team.
No.
So I think there will be opportunities for players.
Yeah, I was getting a bit worried that David Sars hadn't joined us in the chat, but he's here now in full force. I think he's talking about Onana. He said, I'd usually agree about Onana, but I think it's a risk. This is a massive chance to get to Wembley. Can't take any chances. I actually think Onana's right down the pecking order, you know, in midfield. I'd argue if Barkley's fit, he might even be fifth choice central midfielder, Onana, at the moment. Because I think if it came to it, and you've got to get McGinn in the team, I think he'd play McGinn central midfield over Onana at the moment. I think Onana's got some work to do to get into this anywhere near this 11. I've got to be honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, at the moment, yeah, John McGinn's ahead of him simply because Onana's not played much football. I think it's hard because he's not been fit and he's not had enough game time this season to justify that, and that's why I think he will need games between now and the end of the season to give him that little bit of a lift going into next season. There's no way that Villa have invested a lot of money in Amadou Onana, and I don't think I'm pretty sure that Villa are convinced of how good he's going to be. So I think it's just one of those players that Villa will need to give a little bit of time to.
Yeah, and Marlon. I mean, we did a pod on Marlon last week or the week before, myself and Jacob. Kid's got to get a game at some point, hasn't he? And he can't play in the Champions League, so is he going to play this one? Would he play up front instead of Watkins? I still think Watkins will start. So does that mean Marlon's playing on the right, and then we've got an array of players to fit into the other two positions? Do you think Marlon starts?
I do think Marlon starts, and I think he starts wide right. I think Watkins will start up front.
So I wonder what that means for the defence. Mind you, Desarzi's not there, so we wouldn't be playing three centre-backs anyway. So Cash or Garcia, I guess it's a toss-up between those two at right back. But yeah, I think Marlon probably does play. I think Asensio probably plays as the 10. And then I think I've got a feeling Ramsey will start this game. So that would mean Rashford and Rodgers don't.
I think that's a fair shout. I think Ramsey will probably start on the left, and I think Rashford and Rodgers will be on the bench. That's
very rare for Rodgers to be on the bench.
It is. But maybe just gives him that little bit of extra time.
Yeah.
Given the fact he's been involved with England, so loads of options.
Mate, I say this is probably the last few shows. We very rarely do preview shows where everyone's fit and there's an array of options to choose from. But like the options we have and picking a team every week, it is absolutely sensational. Not many teams have this problem. It's sort of like Liverpool are obviously the best team in the Premier League at the moment, but the team kind of picks itself when everyone's fit. Villa's team, when everyone's fit, does not pick itself.
No. I agree. I think there's still players that, and that's maybe a good thing going into the run-in and the business end of the season now, that there's players in that squad and probably in Unai Emery's first 11 that still have a point to prove. There's nobody in there. Well, there's a few players that we've talked about really that are lock-ins, but there are a couple
of players.
Of
the team is a lock. You've got Martinez, Concert, Tillemans, Watkins, straight down the middle. They're locks. Did I say Rodgers? I didn't say Rodgers. And then Rodgers somewhere as well. I think the rest of it, it's so exciting.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. In particular the players that Villa brought in January, they've still got something to prove. They will want to work right up until the last kick of the season, just to secure their own future. So I think that's a positive.
Wow, I mean, we've basically spent the whole show trying to pick a team. So God knows how Unai Emery's going to do it. I imagine he'll do it in a much better way than we just have. But people in the chat at the same time as we're doing it are saying the complete opposite to us. Like his personal opinion, isn't it? But there's so much to consider, especially when you've got 3 games in a week again. Like there's a lot riding on this game, and there's just a lot going on for the club, which the Premier League has felt bitty at times this season. There's been frustration at times this season as well. But you think at 28th of March, where we are, still competing for Champions League qualification through the league. Got a quarter-final this week in the FA Cup. We've got a quarter-final first leg next week. Is it next week? I think it was the week after. In the Champions League. Big Premier League games. This is like, what nice problems to have.
Yeah, and every player is going to be used between now and the end of the season. Everyone's going to have a part to play in this running. It's a really exciting time.
Yeah. Right, let's do our hot/ice cold takes then. Dave Reed, I've forgotten about this, to be honest, myself this week. You never remember. So have you got anything?
I'm going to go with Marlon to score. I'm just going to go Marlon to score. Usually I tag something else on the end.
Usually you'll be like Marlon to score with his left knee in the 72nd minute, something like that. I'm going to go. Let's get Rashford off the mark. I was disappointed he didn't score for England either. The guy hasn't scored for ages, has he? But despite playing well and getting assists, I'm going to go. Actually, you know what? Scrap that. I'm just going to go for Asensio to score 2. Because that's what happens when he's on the pitch. He probably won't even start. Probably just come on and score 2 again. I'm gonna go for Asensio to do that. That's what I'm going to go with. Yep, silence from Dave Reed. He was infused on my pick there.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, all right. And you said you wanted a 3 o'clock finish, and you've got a 3 o'clock finish. So everyone's a winner. Right then, thank you to everyone who's joined us live in the chat. Pleasure to converse with you. Thank you to David Stiles, even though you were late in there every week. I actually thought about him whilst we were talking. So that tells you the community feel that we've that we brought here on 1874, Dave. I nearly said the Villa View then. That really was going back in time. There'll be a show on Monday, myself and Greg, with the usual Monday slot, talking over hopefully Villa getting to Wembley and playing in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. If you're watching on YouTube, then give the video a like, subscribe with your post notifications on, and leave us a comment as well. And do go back and watch the content from yesterday where I had an England expert on and we talked about Villa's England players. David Walker from the England Pod and Football Cliches joined me, and we spoke about Konsa, Rashford, Rodgers, Villa, England, Tuchel. It was a good chat. I thought I really enjoyed it, so hopefully everyone else did as well. If you haven't listened or watched that, go back and do so. Audio-wise, Spotify and Apple, 5-star reviews if you can. Comments, nice reviews, say some nice things on there. Please go and do that. It would be really, really appreciated. And other than that, have a nice lead up to Sunday if you're going. Have a brilliant time. If you're watching at home, have a brilliant time. Don't neglect your mothers, but try and build it around the football if you can. And Dave and I will be previewing a game soon together, I'm sure, because the games are going to start coming thick and fast again. No more international breaks. Plenty of games for Villa. So have a good Friday. Up the Villa.